My fiancé demanded 40% of my salary the day before our wedding. I canceled in front of 150 guests, and her family sued me but never saw what I did next coming. I'm 28 years old. I work in tech. Well, I worked until recently, and I need to tell this story because what happened 3 months ago basically destroyed my life as I knew it, but also, in a weird way, saved me from something much worse. And literally the day before the wedding, I discovered something that made everything go to hell in the most public and humiliating way possible. I don't know if I did the right thing or not. I still ask myself that today, but I guess I need to get this off my chest because the last few weeks have been an emotional roller coaster I wouldn't wish on anyone. Let's start at the beginning, when things still made sense. I met Sarah like 3.5 years ago, maybe 4. I'm not completely sure of the exact date because at first we were just friends and we didn't mark any official anniversary until months later. She worked at the same company as me, in the marketing department, and we met at one of those horrible corporate parties where everyone pretends to have fun while drinking cheap wine and doing forced networking. She came up to me. We started talking about how terrible the background music was, and it all started from there. She was funny, smart, we had the same taste in movies and food, and honestly, I thought I'd found my person, the one you were going to grow old with and all those cheesy things you think when you're in love. The first 2 years were amazing, honestly. We moved in together after the first year, a small but cozy apartment downtown, close to our offices. We adopted a cat named Pixel, because we were both kind of nerds about pet names. We made plans for the future, talked about eventually buying a house, having kids someday, all that stable, happy couple stuff. I liked her family, or at least I thought I did at the time, especially her mother Carol, who was always very nice to me when we'd visit them on Sundays. My parents loved her too. My mom always said Sarah was the perfect daughter-in-law because she'd help in the kitchen and remember everyone's birthdays. Everything seemed perfect. Too perfect, maybe. Looking back, I should have noticed some signs, but I was so into the relationship I didn't see anything weird. We got engaged like a year and 2 months ago. No, wait. It was 10 months before the wedding. So, like a year and a month ago approximately. I did it the traditional way. Asked her parents' permission, even though almost nobody does that anymore. Bought a ring that cost me like 3 months' salary because I wanted it to be special. And took her to the same restaurant where we had our first official date. She cried when I proposed. Said yes. Before I finished asking the question, it was one of the happiest moments of my life. We started planning the wedding almost immediately. Sarah had all these ideas about flowers and decoration. I honestly just wanted the day to be special for her, so I basically agreed to everything she proposed. The date was set for a Saturday in spring. We booked a beautiful place with gardens, hired catering, photographer, live band. The whole thing that costs a fortune, but according to everyone, is worth it because it's the most important day of your life. The months leading up to the wedding were stressful. I'm not going to lie. Sarah was obsessed with every detail. Spent hours on Pinterest looking at centerpieces and napkin colors, things that seemed irrelevant to me, but were fundamental to her. I was busy with work. They'd just promoted me to senior developer with a considerable salary increase, like 35% more than what I was making before, and that meant more responsibilities and more hours at the office. We started arguing more often. Little things like me being late to meetings with wedding vendors or her feeling like I didn't care as much as I should. But I thought it was normal, pre-wedding stress that everyone talks about, that once the ceremony was over, everything would go back to how it was before. The week before the wedding was total chaos. My parents arrived visiting from another state. Sarah's family was also all in town. There were rehearsals and dinners and bachelor and bachelorette parties. Basically, we didn't have a free minute. The Thursday before the Saturday wedding, Sarah decided to stay at her parents' house because, according to her, it was tradition that the groom not see the bride the last few days before the ceremony. Something that seemed kind of old-fashioned to me, but I accepted because, again, I wanted everything to be perfect for her. I stayed alone in the apartment with Pixel, working on some last-minute office projects and trying not to get nervous about the fact that in less than 48 hours I was going to be married. Friday morning, like 10 a.m., I get a message from Carol, Sarah's mom, saying she needs to talk to me urgently about something important related to the wedding. She asks me to meet her at the hotel where we were going to have the reception, that there's a legal matter we need to resolve before tomorrow. I thought maybe it was something about the venue contract or some missing permit. I don't know. I assumed it was administrative and nothing serious. I arrived at the hotel around 1 p.m. Carol was in the lobby waiting for me with a folder in her hands and a serious expression I hadn't seen on her before. She says, "Let's sit down in private," and takes me to one of the hotel's empty conference rooms. Carol takes out some papers from the folder and puts them on the table in front of me. She tells me, "Nathan, Sarah and I have been talking about your future together, and we believe it's important to establish certain financial bases before the marriage to avoid conflicts later." I'm sitting there like, okay, this sounds reasonable. Maybe it's a prenup or something like that. Although we'd never talked about that, but, well, it didn't seem like a bad idea to protect our individual assets. I start reading the document, and at first it seems like a normal contract. Talks about separate bank accounts and ownership of assets acquired before marriage. All good so far. But then I get to a clause. It was on page 3, I think, that said something like, "The husband agrees to transfer 40% of his monthly net salary to a joint account managed exclusively by the wife for household expenses and family savings." I read that part like 3 times, because I can't believe what I'm seeing. 40% of my salary, every month, to an account that only Sarah would control. It wasn't a real joint account where we'd both have equal access. It was basically her taking almost half of what I earned without any reciprocal obligation, because Sarah made considerably less than me, and the contract didn't mention any percentage of her salary. I asked Carol, "Is this for real? Does Sarah know about this?" And she tells me very calmly, "Yes, Nathan, this was mainly Sarah's idea. She believes it's the fairest way to handle marital finances given that you earn more." I sat there feeling like someone had thrown a bucket of cold water on me. Why did we never talk about this before? Why are you presenting this to me literally the day before the wedding? Carol tells me that Sarah wanted to wait until the last moment because she knew I might react badly, and she didn't want to ruin the wedding preparations with discussions about money. She also tells me that if I don't sign the contract, Sarah won't get married tomorrow, that it's a deal breaker for her, and I need to decide right now if I'm willing to make this commitment or not. I feel completely trapped. I have my whole family in town, 150 confirmed guests. We've spent, I don't know how many thousands of dollars on this wedding. That's tomorrow. Literally in less than 24 hours, and they're dropping this bomb on me. I try calling Sarah, but Carol tells me she's busy with final preparations and doesn't want to talk to me until after I sign. That seemed really weird to me, like if this is so important and so normal as Carol is making it seem, why isn't Sarah here explaining it to me herself? I tell Carol I need to think, that this is a very big decision to make so suddenly, and she tells me I have until 6 p.m. that day to sign, or the wedding gets canceled. I leave the hotel feeling completely lost, call my best friend Jake and tell him everything. He's as shocked as I am. Tells me this is a giant red flag. How is it possible that Sarah never mentioned this in 3 years of relationship? That it sounds like total financial manipulation. But on the other hand, there's the reality that the wedding is tomorrow, that if I cancel now, I'm going to be the villain who left Sarah at the altar the day before getting married, that my family is going to hate me for making them come all the way here for nothing, that everyone's going to think I'm an idiot or a coward. Around 4 p.m., I decide I need to talk to Sarah, directly. I don't care what Carol says. I drive to her parents' house, knock on the door, and Sarah comes out. She's surprised to see me there. I ask her if we can talk in private and we go out to the yard. I tell her, "Sarah, your mom showed me a contract today. Do you know what I'm talking about?" She immediately gets defensive, says yes, that it's something perfectly reasonable, that all modern couples have financial agreements, that I should be happy to contribute more because I earn more. I try to explain to her that it's not the percentage that bothers me so much, although 40% seems excessive to me, but the fact that she's presenting this to me now, the day before the wedding, as an ultimatum, without ever discussing it before. I ask her, "Why did we never talk about this in 3 years? Why did you wait until now?" Sarah starts crying, says she was afraid of my reaction, that she knew I was going to resist, that her mom advised her to wait until we were emotionally committed to the wedding, so it would be harder for me to say no. That hits me really hard. I mean, she's basically admitting that she manipulated me, that she planned this with her mother as some kind of trap. I ask her directly, if I don't sign this, are you really not going to get married tomorrow? And she looks at me and says, no, Nathan, I can't marry someone who isn't willing to share their resources with me equitably. This is important to me. I start to understand that the woman I thought I was going to marry isn't who I thought she was, or maybe she always was like this and I was too blind to see it. I go back to my apartment, sit on the couch with Pixel on my lap, and spend the next few hours thinking, what the fuck am I going to do? On one hand, I can sign the contract, get married tomorrow, make everyone happy, and maybe try to renegotiate this later. On the other hand, if I sign under pressure, what does that say about our relationship? Am I going to be in a marriage where my wife and mother-in-law can emotionally blackmail me whenever they want something? What's going to be next? A contract to have kids, a contract for where we live, a contract for every fucking decision we make together. And then something occurs to me. An idea that's probably terrible, but in that moment seems genius. I'm going to sign the contract, but I'm going to expose all this shit publicly at the wedding. I'm going to make Sarah and her family go through the same humiliation they're making me go through now. It's vindictive, I know. It's dramatic, and it's going to cause a huge scandal. But honestly, in that moment, I didn't care. I was so angry, so betrayed, that I just wanted everyone to know the truth about what had happened. I call Carol around 5:30 p.m. and tell her I'm ready to sign. We meet again at the hotel. I sign every page of the contract with her and a notary present. They give me a copy and tell me everything's ready for tomorrow. Carol hugs me and says, you did the right thing. Nathan, you'll see that this marriage is going to be wonderful. I just smile and think, we'll see. Saturday arrives and honestly, it's all a blur of nerves and adrenaline. I wake up early, get dressed in my suit that I'd had specially made for the occasion, look at myself in the mirror and think, am I really going to do this? My parents come pick me up. We're all in the car on the way to the church. My mom is excited talking about how beautiful Sarah is going to look and how happy she is that I'm getting married. I feel terrible because I know that in about an hour I'm going to destroy all this. But there's no turning back now. I've already made my decision. We arrive at the venue. It's a beautiful garden with an outdoor altar decorated exactly as Sarah wanted, with white and pink flowers, chairs for all the guests already full of people, soft background music. Everyone congratulates me, pats me on the back, tells me I look nervous, but that it's normal. I stand at the altar waiting. The contract is in the inside pocket of my jacket. I can feel the paper there every time I breathe. The wedding march starts, everyone stands up, and I see Sarah walking arm in arm with her father down the center aisle. She looks beautiful. I'm not going to lie. The dress is spectacular. Her makeup is perfect. She's smiling with that smile that made me fall in love 3 years ago. For a second, I almost regret what I'm about to do, almost consider going through with the ceremony and forgetting about all this. But then I see her look at her mom in the first row. They exchange a look that basically says, we did it, and all my anger comes back. Sarah arrives at the altar. Her dad hands her over to me. The officiant starts with the traditional speech about marriage and eternal love. The moment for vows arrives, and the officiant tells me, Nathan, do you have something you want to say to your bride before we proceed? Normally, this is where couples say their personalized vows. If they have, then prepared. I take the contract out of my pocket and see how Sarah's face changes completely, goes from smile to pure panic in a second. I unfold the pages and start reading out loud. Yesterday, Friday, I was presented with a contract by the bride's mother requiring that I transfer 40% of my monthly salary to an account controlled exclusively by Sarah. This contract was never discussed with me in our 3 years of relationship. It was presented to me as an ultimatum the day before the wedding, with the threat that if I didn't sign it, the wedding would be canceled. The silence that falls over all the guests is deafening. You can literally hear every breath. Sarah is crying, trying to take the paper from me, telling me, Nathan, stop, please stop. But I keep reading every clause of the contract, explaining how it works, how there's no reciprocity, how this was planned as a trap. When I finish reading, I look at Sarah and tell her, I thought you loved me. I thought we wanted to build a life together based on trust and mutual respect. But this isn't love, Sarah. This is financial manipulation. I tear the contract into pieces in front of everyone, throw them on the ground, take off the boutonniere from my jacket and put it on the torn papers. I tell her, I can't marry someone who deceived me in this way. I'm sorry. And I start walking toward the exit while the place explodes in murmurs and screams. I hear Carol yelling that I'm a monster. How dare I humiliate her daughter like this? I hear Sarah sobbing uncontrollably. I hear my own mother saying my name with total shock. I leave the venue, get in my car that was parked outside for the supposed triumphant post-ceremony exit, and drive with no clear destination for like an hour. I can't process what I just did. My hands are shaking on the steering wheel. I feel like I'm going to throw up at any moment. I end up at a bar near my apartment, drink like 4 whiskeys in a row, even though I don't normally drink like that. I just needed to turn off my brain for a while. My phone won't stop ringing, calls from my parents, from friends, messages asking me what the fuck happened, but I can't answer anyone yet. When I finally get back to the apartment around 8 p.m., still wearing the suit, but a total mess, I find like 30 voicemails. I start listening to them one by one. My mom is crying, saying she can't believe I did that. How could I humiliate Sarah and her family like that? That everyone is devastated. My dad is calmer, but also disappointed. Says, I understand you were angry, but that wasn't the way to handle the situation. You could have canceled the wedding privately. Sarah's parents left like 5 messages, each one angrier than the last, saying, I'm a horrible person, that I ruined their daughter's life, that they're going to sue me for the wedding expenses. Sarah only left one message, very short, just says, I hate you, Nathan. I'm never going to forgive you for this. The following days were the worst of my life. No exaggeration. My parents went back to their city without even saying goodbye properly to me. Only my mom gave me a cold hug and told me they needed time to process everything. My phone kept receiving messages from people. Some supporting me saying I did right not to let myself be manipulated, others telling me I'm a monster for making it public. That there are things that are handled privately. Social media was a nightmare. Someone had recorded part of the ceremony, and the video went viral in local Facebook groups. Everyone had an opinion about what happened. Sarah blocked all my numbers and social media, obviously, but her mom Carol kept sending me messages, telling me I had to pay them back, everything they spent on the wedding. That it was the least I could do after what I did. About a week after all this, I decided to try to fix things with my parents. I called them. We talked on the phone for like 2 hours. I explained everything from the beginning. How I felt when they presented me with the contract, how betrayed I felt, why I thought exposing it publicly was necessary. My dad finally understood my point, said he probably would have wanted to do something similar if he were in my position, although he admitted that maybe not in such a dramatic way. My mom took longer to calm down, but eventually accepted that Sarah had put me in an impossible position. She asked me, was there really no other way to handle it, Nathan? And honestly, I didn't know what to answer, because in that moment, with all the rage and pain I felt, I didn't see another way out. We eventually reconciled. They said they supported me and that I could visit them whenever I wanted. That made me feel a little better. But Sarah was a completely different story. I went back to the apartment like 2 weeks after the failed wedding. I'd been staying at a cheap hotel because I didn't want to be alone with my thoughts in that space we shared. I thought Sarah would still be there, that we'd have that awkward conversation about how to divide our things and who kept the apartment. But when I opened the door, the place was almost empty. All her things had disappeared. Her clothes, her books, her plants, everything. She left the furniture we bought together, but took absolutely anything that was only hers. She didn't leave any note, no message, she just left. She even took Pixel, our cat, which hurt me more than I expected because technically I had adopted him before we moved in together. But I guess she considered he was hers too. 3 weeks after the altar incident, I receive a certified letter. It's Sarah's parents formally suing me for the wedding expenses. They're claiming like $35,000, which according to them is what they spent on the venue, catering, flowers, photographer, everything. The letter says that since I was the one who canceled the wedding in such a dramatic and public way, I'm responsible for compensating them for the losses. I consult with a lawyer. He tells me they probably don't have a case because technically we were both responsible for the expenses and the wedding didn't happen for legitimate reasons, but that it's still going to be a legal headache that could last months. I decide to try to talk directly with them before this escalates further. I go to Sarah's parents' house on a Saturday afternoon, without warning because I know if I call first they won't let me in. I knock on the door, and Carol comes out, looks at me with so much hate, it almost makes me step back. I tell her we need to talk about the lawsuit, that I don't want this to get uglier than it already is. She lets me in but doesn't offer me a seat. We stand in the living room. Sarah's dad is there too, and they basically yell at me for half an hour about how terrible I am, how I destroyed their daughter's life, how Sarah is devastated and won't leave her room, how their friends and family are judging them because of me. I tell them, look, I understand. You're angry, but Sarah presented me with an impossible contract the day before the wedding. That's not okay either. Carol interrupts me and says, that contract was perfectly reasonable. It was to protect Sarah's future. You're selfish for not wanting to share your resources. I respond that it's not about sharing or not. It's about the way everything was handled, about the manipulation and deceit. Sarah's dad says he doesn't care about my excuses, that I'm going to pay them back every cent they spent, or we'll see each other in court. The conversation goes nowhere. I end up leaving angrier than I arrived. That night, I break my own rule and write to Sarah from a new number she doesn't have blocked. I just send her a message saying, Sarah, we need to talk about your parents. They're suing me, and this is getting unsustainable. She responds like 2 hours later, just says, not my problem, Nathan. You brought this on yourself. Now deal with the consequences. I write back, really? After 3 years together? After everything we went through? You're going to let your parents do this? Aren't you even going to try to talk to me? She responds, you humiliated me in front of everyone who matters to me. You destroyed the most important day of my life. What did you expect, Nathan? That I'd thank you? You're on your own in this, just like you left me alone at that altar. That message exchange makes me realize it's really over, that there's no way to fix this, that the person I loved for 3 years basically doesn't exist for me anymore, and I don't exist for her beyond being the villain of her story. It's a weird feeling, like grief but also relief, because part of me knew that if I had married her, sooner or later, this would have exploded in another way, maybe worse. I decide to make big changes in my life. I quit my job at the tech company. I couldn't be in that environment anymore, where everyone knew what had happened and looked at me weird. My dad offers me something I never thought I'd do. He invites me to be his partner in a business he's starting, something related to financial consulting. I accept because I need a fresh start, something completely different. I move to a smaller apartment but closer to where my family lives. I start therapy because I clearly need to process all this with someone professional. The first sessions are hard. I cry more than I expected, but I also start to understand things about myself and about the relationship I had with Sarah that I'd never seen before. 3 months after the wedding disaster, I'm at a bar with Jake and other friends trying to have a normal night, to feel like a regular person again. And then I see her. Sarah is there, on the other side of the bar, with a group of her friends. Our eyes meet for a second, and it's like all the air leaves my lungs. She looks different, thinner maybe, with shorter hair, but she's still her. My friends notice I saw her and ask me if I want to leave, but I tell them, no, that it's okay, that we can stay. Like half an hour later, Sarah approaches me alone while I'm ordering a beer at the bar. She tells me, hi, Nathan. With such a neutral voice, I don't know how to interpret it. I respond, hi, Sarah. How have you been? She laughs without humor and says, do you really want to know? I tell her, yes, that despite everything, I still care how she is. We move to a table away from our respective groups of friends, and we have the conversation we probably should have had 3 months ago. Sarah tells me she's sorry, that the contract was a terrible idea, that her mom convinced her it was necessary, but that she now understands the way they handled it was wrong. She tells me she's been in therapy too, processing everything, and that her therapist helped her see that her actions were manipulative and unhealthy. I thank her for the apology, but also tell her, Sarah, I'm sorry too for making it public like that. I know I hurt you and there were probably better ways to handle the situation. She nods and says, We both fucked up, Nathan, just in different ways. We talk for like an hour, covering everything. What happened with the lawsuit? Her parents eventually dropped it after Sarah told them to let it go. What she's been doing started a new job at another company, living with a roommate. What I've been doing. I tell her about the business with my dad, about moving. It's strangely cathartic to have this conversation, to feel like there's finally some closure. When we say goodbye, we hug, brief but genuine, and she tells me, Take care, Nathan. I hope you find what you're looking for. I tell her the same, and we each go back to our friends. Now, 4 months after all this drama, I'm in a mentally better place than I expected. The business with my dad is going well. We're starting to have regular clients, and honestly, I enjoy working with him in a way I never thought I would. I got a new dog, a golden retriever named Max, who's basically my furry, therapist and the best company I could ask for. I still think about Sarah sometimes, especially when I see happy couples or when I hear songs we used to sing together in the car. I'm not gonna lie and say I'm completely over her because that would be false. 3 years of your life don't get erased in 4 months. But I also don't regret walking out of that wedding. It was dramatic. It was painful. It was probably one of the hardest things I've done, but it was necessary. If I had married Sarah under those conditions, with that contract hanging over me, with that dynamic of manipulation and control, I would have been miserable. I would have been asking myself every month when I transferred that 40% of my salary if this was really what I wanted for my life. The way I did it wasn't perfect. Maybe it wasn't even right, but it was honest. I put all the cards on the table, literally, and let everyone know the truth. Would I do something different if I could go back? I don't know. Probably. Maybe I would have tried to talk more with Sarah beforehand, understand where her need for that contract came from, what fears or insecurities led her to think it was necessary. Maybe I would have canceled the wedding privately and saved myself all the public embarrassment. But I also understand that in that moment, with all the rage and betrayal I felt, I wasn't thinking rationally. I was hurt, and I wanted her to feel even a fraction of the pain she'd caused me. The lesson I take from all this, if there is one, is that communication in a relationship is everything. Sarah and I were together for 3 years, and we never really talked about our financial expectations, about how we imagined our future in concrete terms and not just vague dreams. We assumed we were on the same page but never verified if that was the case. And when the truth finally came out, it was too late and in the worst possible way. In my next relationship, if there is a next relationship, I'm going to have those uncomfortable conversations from the beginning. I'm going to ask the hard questions. I'm going to be honest about what I want and need, and I'm going to make sure the other person can do the same. For now, I'm focusing on myself, on building this new life that somehow feels more authentic than what I had before. I go out with friends, work on the business, spend time with my family, train with Max at the park. I'm not looking for love because, honestly, I'm still processing everything that happened, but I'm not closed to the possibility either. Life has a strange way of giving you exactly what you need when you least expect it, and maybe all this painful and humiliating mess, I was exactly what I needed to grow and understand what I really want, from a partner and from myself. Last week, I ran into Carol at the supermarket. It was the first time I'd seen her since that terrible conversation at her house. I expected her to ignore me or insult me, but she simply looked at me, nodded slightly, and went on her way. It's strange how things that seemed so monumental and impossible to overcome a few months ago are now just awkward but manageable moments. I guess that's part of healing. That the wounds are still there but hurt less over time. That the people who hurt you become strangers again. That life simply goes on.